Great. Go ahead, Rick.
Okay, thanks. I'm Rick Rasby, Extension Bee Specialist, and they've asked me to talk today about primarily focus on use of low-quality crop residues and basically talk about ammoniation. Then on the tail end of the talk, what I thought we'd do is maybe talk a little bit about storage of byproducts. We've talked about that quite a bit here in the past few years, so I'll just touch on that briefly. What we'll talk about is ammoniation and use of it on low-quality forages. Talk a little bit about how that process happens, and then I have a slide on some data, and then we'll take a look at the cost of ammoniation. So that's how we'll go through the presentation. I did appreciate what Kate had to say in regards to hay supplies. And if you take a look at this graph, on the x-axis we have beginning 1950, and then we have tons on the y-axis. But you take a look at that over time. We've had a steady increase in forage production in the United States for a long period of time. You get into these latter years here, we see a reduction in forage production in the United States. In fact, a fairly dramatic reduction in forage production in the United States, and probably due to a couple factors. One would be drought, right? That's probably impacted forage production quite a bit. But also the other thing that you might think about is that corn prices probably moved some of the ground that was used for hay to, or used to hay into crop production. So those are two reasons why we've probably seen, at least the last few years, a fairly dramatic reduction in hay supplies. And I would say that as we look forward is that I think this will be a challenge for producers, is how do you acquire a hay supply, or at least hay for the cows, especially for those that have systems where we use hay in that production system. When you take a look at annual cow costs for the cow-calf producer, feed costs make up about 65 to 70% of cow costs. And when you think about feed costs, the primary component of feed cost for the cow-calf producer is energy. And so a lot of that 65 to 70% of annual cow cost is basically wrapped up in energy. And you take a look at it, cost of energy over the last few years have increased quite a bit for the cow-calf producer. I think from a Nebraska standpoint, the thing that we have available for us is corn residue, wheat straw, as well as soybean stubble basically to work into that cow-calf feeding program. Now in this table, I've got three columns here. One would be forage type in that first column, class of livestock in the second column, and then we have dry matter intake, okay, as a percent of body weight, and then I have actual dry matter intake. And what you notice that in the second column, class of livestock, you have dry cows and lactating cows. And so lactating cows eat more than dry cows. But the one that I'd like to maybe have you focus on is that I've basically broken this forage type down into forages that have a TDN content of less than 53%, average quality forage here of 53 to 59% TDN. Then I have some high quality forages that are greater than 59% TDN. And then I have pasture and silage. And what you notice here when you take a look at dry matter intake as in regards to percent of body weight on a dry matter basis, that as you increase forage quality, what happens to intake? Intake actually goes up, okay? So intake goes up as you increase forage quality, and that's basically indicated here, less than 53% TDN to greater than 59% TDN. So if dry matter intake based on a body weight goes up, then total capacity of total intake also goes up. So the reverse of that would be as forage quality goes down, as we move up this column, intake goes down in those cattle. And so the thing that I'd have you think about as a forage matures, what happens to cell wall structure? It becomes very rigid, and it's just doggone difficult for the rumen microbes. Once that cow eats it, gets it into the digestive system, it's a little bit more difficult when you decrease or increase maturity of that forage. It's more difficult for those rumen bugs to attach and start to digest that forage. I would say that cows don't quit eating wheat straw because they don't like it. They quit eating wheat straw because they can't get it through the system quick enough, kicked out the back end so that they can eat more. And so the idea behind some of these things that we'll talk about here in a few minutes, how can we actually make that low quality forage more available to the rumen microbes so that we can actually increase digestibility and therefore increase forage intake of that low quality forage. So this is kind of a 3D schematic. Adam Strick put this together, but what it really illustrates is that as that plant matures, as it gets more mature, the structure of that cell wall becomes increasingly more rigid and tighter, and at least more difficult for the rumen microbes to come in and break it down. And so what we'd like to do is that it's been around for a long time, is that you can actually treat forages with some chemicals that actually open up that cell wall structure and allows rumen microbes to go in there and have better access to that forage that has to be fairly mature in the stage of production. We've used alkali treatment, we use peroxides, and the one that I would like to talk about here is ammoniation. So it's a hydrolytic kinds of reaction, and basically these 6 bullet points, basically what they say is that when you treat it with anhydrous ammonia, that it actually increases the, or at least makes available or opens up that cell wall structure and makes it more available for the bugs to get at that very mature forage so they can be easier digested in the rumen. So it increases or partial solubilization of hemicellulose. As you think of, as a plant matures, you increase the amount of hemicellulose, cellulose, and lignin. And those are hard to digest by the rumen microbes. So what these hydrolytic reactions do, increases partial solubilization of the hemicellulose. Basically, the lignin and the silicon solubilize, disrupts this hydrogen bond to make it more available for the rumen microbes to attack. Therefore, and the other thing that it does, increases the rate of fiber hydration, so it expands that fiber component, and then it increases the rate of bacterial colonization. And when you go through those steps in the chemical treatment, let's say it's something like anhydrous ammonia, you basically open up that plant wall structure so that the rumen microbes can go ahead and attack it, that mature forage, a lot easier. And so this is another diagram. If you take a look at it here again, I have illustrated here this very structured cell wall, and then we have anhydrous ammonia plus some moisture there. It basically goes through, opens up that cell wall component, cell wall structure. I don't know if it makes it less rigid, but it sure enough makes it more available for those rumen microbes to attack. Another schematic is that basically ammoniation basically comes through, makes those fiber components less rigid, more available, and then the next, basically the next illustration here is that the Pac-Man can go ahead and have better access or easier access to that cell wall fiber, so that those animals can basically get in there and digest that very mature forage a lot easier. So here's the ammoniation process, and if you take a look at it, the picture basically shows a diagram, or at least illustrates what goes on in the ammoniation process. Later on in the program this afternoon, we've got a YouTube video that will go through that quite extensively. But you take a look at ammoniation, that process is temperature dependent. And the thing that I would say is that as the temperatures remain fairly high, the reaction doesn't take as long, in fact about a week. As temperatures decrease, it takes longer for the ammoniation process to take effect. And so if you take a look at ammoniation, the temperature, average daily temperature is about 59 degrees. You're going to have to keep that ammoniated package, if you will, sealed for anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. Forage must be covered and sealed completely until the reaction time is complete. As you think about putting those bales together underneath the plastic, I would leave somewhere between 3 to 4 inches between those pyramids, if you will, and that allows for the anhydrous then to circulate around those bales to attach to that straw or that low-quality forage to start the ammoniation process. In the summer, I think as you think about what's important for ammoniation, you don't want the bales really wet, but you want to have some moisture on those bales because that's part of the reaction, as I showed you in that previous slide. And so as you think about it, reaction time is temperature dependent. You must keep the bales sealed. So for the amount of time needed, that amount of time needed is temperature dependent. Keep them covered. Leave a little bit of space in between those bales so that the forage, or at least the anhydrous, can get around all bales, if you will, so they can start the process. And again, the idea would be to bale that residue with a little bit of dew on it as well. Anhydrous treatment, when you take a look at the data, dry matter increases about 22% as compared to non-treated residue. Digestibility increases about 15% as compared to non-treated residue. Because you add anhydrous, you'll get an increase in nitrogen in that ammoniated wheat straw or low-quality forage. So you'll see the protein content, if you put it through an NIR analysis, will also increase. The other thing that I'd say, and I'd reiterate again, is that one is you got to keep it sealed. It's temperature dependent. Baling straw with a little bit of dew on it probably will, well, it will help the reaction time. And then the reaction time is influenced by the temperature. So the higher the temperature, the shorter length of time that you need to keep that ammoniated package sealed. This would be some data that you got to go back a long way, maybe not quite the time of Terry Kloppenstein, but about the time of Terry Kloppenstein. But this would be some work done by John Ward, and they fed gestating beef cows ammoniated wheat straw. And here's how this table sets up. This would be straw plus 7 pounds of alfalfa, treated straw or ammoniated straw plus 7 pounds of alfalfa, and then just the ammoniated straw fed by itself. They added the 7 pounds of alfalfa to help meet the protein requirement, at least according to the NRC at that time. This middle column here would be daily straw intake. So that's daily straw intake. So the straw intake when they fed straw plus 7 pounds of alfalfa would be 14.8 pounds of straw. Treated straw plus 7 pounds of alfalfa is 19.7 pounds of straw. And then straw by itself or treated straw would be about 26 pounds. So this would be gestating beef cows prior to calving. And then when you take a look at weight change, when they're fed straw plus 7 pounds of alfalfa, they lost weight. When they fed treated straw plus 7 pounds of alfalfa, they gained about 0.4 of a pound per day. And then when they fed just treated straw alone, they were able to gain on those cows, late gestating beef cows, about 0.1 of a pound per head per day. And so when you think about the use of ammoniated straw, at least without supplementation, best use for ammoniated straw would probably be prior to calving for gestating beef cows. We'll talk about maybe how we might use it after calving if we still have ammoniated wheat straw. But the thing I'd like to point out here is that cows fed ammoniated wheat straw alone gained as well as cows that were fed 7 pounds of alfalfa along with ammoniated wheat straw, and they gained better than cows fed non-ammoniated wheat straw plus 7 pounds of alfalfa. I don't know if it shows up very well, but I put together a budget. And so in this budget, what I have, and I didn't consult Kate, probably should have, but I have wheat straw. If you would buy wheat straw at, that would be price per ton that you would add in there. Basically what I did is I put in baled wheat straw, and I put a price per bale at 13 pounds, or $13 per bale. I have labor to prepare the site, and in the YouTube video you'll see how to prepare that site. Then I have a machinery cost in there, plastic to cover the package or the low quality forage, labor to do that. I have anhydrous. I priced anhydrous at $770 a ton. Miscellaneous. If you take a look at in the YouTube video, they'll show you a pipe and some tubing to get the anhydrous from the tank into the underneath the plastic. Then I have a total cost per stack, and then I have a cost per ton of ammoniated wheat straw. I used $13 for the baling cost, labor at $10. I needed 6 hours to do that. 6 hours of machinery time, plastic at $280 to cover 84 bales, basically 3 on the bottom, 2, and then that pyramid would be 3, 2, 1, 1,000 bales in there, 4 hours of labor to get it covered, and then the anhydrous. The total cost for 84 bales that weighed about 1,000 pounds would be a little over $2,500. And then total cost would be for ammoniation, including only baling cost up here, would be about $60.12. So if you were buying ammoniated, or you were not ammoniated wheat straw, but if you were buying wheat straw bales, you could basically take the baling cost out and then put the bale cost on a per ton basis up here. So when I calculated that, if you take a look at the requirements for late gestating beef cows, she's going to need somewhere between 53 to 56% TDN. So I calculated the cost of wheat straw on a per ton of TDN basis, dry matter basis, using 56% TDN. The cost of that with just baling cost in there was going to be about 6 cents per pound of TDN on a dry basis. That cost would change if you were buying wheat straw, right? Because you pull out the baling cost and you add the cost of the wheat straw that you had to the cost of the wheat straw that you had to purchase. The other thing about this particular feed source is that it doesn't have to be ground. It can be fed. It can be fed in a large or bale feeder or unrolled, and so you don't have any grinding costs associated with that. And so it's really, when you take a look at it from an energy standpoint, it does do a good job of meeting that cow's energy requirements prior to calving, and that would be the cost. Summary on wheat, on ammoniation, the process is to be used only on low-quality forages. So low-quality forages such as wheat straw, corn stalk bales, maybe some CRP hay that was less than 5% crude protein. I would not ammoniate, and we don't recommend ammoniation of any higher quality kinds of feed, especially summer annuals, because there can be a disease that passed, or at least a condition passed through the milk to the calf that you don't want to have to manage against. So the process is only for low quality forages. Bale forages with a dew on it or have some moisture in there, because the anhydrous does need attaches to that moisture that's on the bale and starts the process. Increases digestibility about 15%, increases dry matter intake by about 22%. If you had an analysis and you took a look at non-treated hay straw as compared to treated straw, that you'll see an increase in protein content, and that's okay. But I would say 3 and 4 are more important than the increase in protein content. Okay, the increase in digestibility and therefore the increase in intake are the important components when you think about ammoniation. From a management standpoint, even if you ammoniate this in the summer and you're going to feed it in wintertime, that I'd open up that stack 2 to 3 days before you feed it, because there will still be some anhydrous ammonia in there, and so that helps with that to dissipate out. Handle anhydrous with care. That would be pretty important. From a feed standpoint, without supplementation, it probably works best prior to calving on gestating beef cows. The other thing is that if you had it for after calving, first calf heifers probably pre-calving, you'd need some kind of supplementation. They'd probably be just a little bit short on energy, so some kind of energy source prior to calving for first calf heifers. And then after calving, if you had some ammoniated product, probably need some energy supplementation into that system as well. But that would be the summary of ammoniation. I just thought maybe I'd spend just a few minutes talking about putting byproducts with forages. We've talked about that a lot the last few years. When in the summertime, when byproduct is cheap, it's a way that we can store byproduct, buy it cheap, store byproduct in the summertime, and then feed it in the wintertime. This would be the process. You grind the hay, at least in our system, add it to a mixer wagon. You would add the byproduct. Then you can actually put it into an ag bag. This is basically putting it into an ag bag right here. And then if you put some pressure, about 300 pounds of PSI pressure, this would be 20% forage on a dry matter basis, 15, 12.5, and then you get down here so low that when you put pressure on it, the ag bag will actually break. And so the idea would be to get the right combinations when you get it into or you're going to store byproduct and forage that way. You can also pack it into a bunker. Okay, and we've had a lot of folks pack it into a bunker. Basically handle it just like you would handle silage. You still need it wet enough so that it gets a good pack, right? Because that's how you're going to seal it to store it over time. And so too wet is not good. Too dry is not good as well. And so this would be grinding, mixer wagon, adding it into the bunker or to the pit, and then packing it in. And so we actually have resources that are on our beef website. You can actually also, those would be The wet distiller's grains, you can also do that with solubles. Sometimes in the summertime, you can get solubles extremely cheap, and it can also be put into a bunker or ag bag. If you're going into a bunker, the ratio that we've used and works pretty well, 41% solubles, and then 59% to corn stalk residues work pretty well. Putting it into a bunker and it packs extremely well, and stores good over the summertime, can be fed in the wintertime. This is our beef website, beef.unl.edu. We have there's a byproduct navigator bar, and I can't read it very well here, but there is a byproduct navigator bar. If you click on that navigator bar, it'll take you to a page that has everything that we have done and know about byproduct and byproduct storage. Also in there, there's a manual on byproduct storage, and if you know the moisture content of the forage and you know the moisture content of the byproduct that you're trying to store with forage, it'll go through a worksheet with you to help you calculate what that ratio would be, and then you can mix it together and either put it into an ag bag or pack it into a bunker. With that, any questions?